Hi guys, Brexiteers are so desperate to find a benefit of leaving the European Union that they'll have to lie about deals with other countries or states within those countries, like the US. Richard Tice, the head of Reform UK, which incidentally has his own show on GB News, had some exciting information for Brexit supporters. Fellow Brexiteer Kemi Badenoch had allegedly signed a deal with the state of Florida in the US. Richard spoke to a fellow Brexiteer from a right-wing think tank about this wonderful news. But of course, there's a slight problem with all of this.
And guess what? I've got some good news. Good Brexit news. I have to say that brings a big smile to me and many, many others. Yes, because actually, Kemi Badenoch, the International Development Secretary, Trade Secretary, has already done a deal with the state of Florida in the US.
Not a deal. It's a memorandum of understanding. There's a big difference between a memorandum of understanding and a trade deal. Now, later in this clip, this will be explained somewhat to Richard Tice, but the difference really is the difference between somebody saying, hey, come and work for me at the weekend, help me out, and actually an employment contract.
You might say, how does that work? Well, I'm delighted to say that my guest in the studio, Catherine McBride, free market economist and fellow at the Centre For Brexit Policy, is here to explain it all, why it is truly good news. Catherine, a very good evening to you. So tell us about this it's a memorandum of understanding, isn't it, with
yes.
a state within the 50 states of the US. What's involved and how is it different from a national deal at the federal level?
Well, because of the way the US government is set up, you have federal laws and you have state laws and state regulations. A lot of service industries are regulated by the state as well. They have an umbrella organisation or regulation from the federal government. But if you want to sell insurance in the US, you have to get permission per state. It's mainly run by the states. And therefore, to get an MOU with Florida, which is the fourth biggest state economically, it's worth about £1 trillion. Its GDP is $1 trillion US dollars, not pounds. It's as big as Spain. You know, this is a big deal.
Just think about that. I mean, that's extraordinary. People might be saying, well, why is it good news a state in the US? But where you've got a state like Florida, whose economy is as big as the whole of Spain, actually is really significant.
But you're not having a trade deal with Florida. This is not the same as having a trade deal with the European Union. Does Richard Tice not understand that? Now, of course, the person he has on the panel here is not going to inform him about the massive difference between having a memorandum of understanding. It's not even a trade deal. Even if it was a trade deal, we know, and how many times do we have to say this, you do most of your trade with your neighbours. Now, she mentioned insurance. How does trade in insurance, help small businesses in Great Britain who are struggling to export? Like the cheese exporters or companies that are importing parts to make finished goods. How does not even a trade deal, how does a memorandum of understanding with Florida help those companies out? It doesn't. She's talking about services. But Richard Tice talks about Spain here. But we're talking about goods, mainly goods trading between Britain and Spain, not services.
It's very significant. And also, they deal in two industries we're very good at. We both do a lot of financial services. They also do a lot of fintech, and they do a lot of aerospace. And the UK, a lot of people don't know this, but making aircraft parts and spacecraft parts and satellites is something we're quite good at.
Wonderful. But this is not a trade deal. We're not anywhere near a trade deal. Do you understand that memorandums of understanding exist between EU member states and US states? So there's no benefit of Brexit here. There's no, here we have, now we can actually do memorandums of understanding. No, the UK could do memorandums of understanding with US states when it was a member of the EU. It has recently done a memorandum of understanding with Italy. But that's not a trade deal. It's completely different.
That's absolutely right. So from that perspective, it's a real opportunity for us.
It is a very good opportunity.
It's a potential opportunity. That's if you have a trade deal, but you won't have a trade deal with Florida. You'll have a trade deal with the US. Now, we know that one of the requirements that the US has put on the table, it's not a guarantee, but put on the table, is the selling off of the NHS, the importation into Britain of hormone-treated beef. The US is the bigger party here. We've seen it before. And look at the trade deals that Britain has already signed. The Brexiteers have signed with Australia, benefiting Australia, New Zealand, benefiting New Zealand, more than Britain, Japan, benefiting Japan more than Britain. So can you imagine the type of trade deal Brexiteers would sign if they could do it? I don't think there's enough time now, but if the Brexiteers were in charge of the negotiations with the US, what do you think they would sell off? Who do you think would benefit?
Absolutely fantastic. The government's been moving around so much, it's hard to actually keep up with all the different appointments. I think I may have maligned Kemi Badenoch. I think she's now the business secretary, but it really is hard to keep up with all
It's actually called the Department of Business and Trade.
It's business and trade, and it changes every other month as far as I can see.
Yes.
But this is good news, and this is I think it's the 7th state deal that's been done. When does this
Not a deal! Stop calling it a deal!
memorandum of understanding turn into an actual legally binding deal?
That's a good thing. I don't actually know when it will actually start, but
Because it's not a precursor. It's not, well, in a sense it is a precursor, but it's not a guarantee that a memorandum of understanding will turn into a trade deal. But once again, the UK will not be doing a trade deal with Florida in the same way it won't be doing a trade deal with California or New York or whatever. It will be doing a trade deal with the US, because it will be the US government that will sign the trade deal with the UK, not states of the US or member states of the EU, in the same way as we had a memorandum of understanding between Great Britain and Italy.
But it isn't like a trade deal. Like at the moment, I'm in the process of ratifying the CPTPP. I'm on the Trade and Agriculture Commission. We scrutinise the deals. These sort of memorandums don't have the same level of scrutiny because it is really just an agreement that we can do business together.
Got it. So when would it actually take effect? I mean, does it take effect like immediately, or is the
He still doesn't understand. It's not a deal, Richard. It doesn't take effect. It's like a gentleman's agreement. When does the gentleman's agreement take effect? It doesn't really take effect. It's like, let's sit down together and have a discussion about trade. That's it. There's nothing written down. There's no signing of some sort of agreement. You're going to do X and you're going to do Y and we're going to do Y. That's not how it works. The UK has a memorandum of understanding with Rwanda at the moment. And one of the big problems is that Rwanda have not been upholding their side of the deal. But it isn't a legally binding contract. So the UK can't take Rwanda to an international court and say you have broken the deal, because it isn't an actual official deal.
I think it happens quite quickly, because we signed one with North Carolina earlier, and there were already a group called Marshall Aerospace, which is based in Cambridge, has already set up an operation in North Carolina.
Right.
But that's not a memorandum of understanding. What is she talking? She's once again sort of muddying the waters between the trade deal and the memorandum of understanding. So she's trying to pretend, we sort of signed something like this with North Carolina, and look at the result of that.
So that they seem to be able to do that quite quickly once the memorandum is signed.
Would you expect more state deals, and maybe that's a lot easier to do than, frankly, an overarching national deal?
No, you can't do state deals. Oh my goodness, Richard Tice is supposed to be a businessman. He's the head of Reform UK, and he doesn't understand the difference between a trade deal and a memorandum of understanding. You're not going to sign these deals with individual states. Yes, you can have agreements, but it won't be legally binding, and it won't override US federal law. In the same way as you can have memorandums of understanding with EU member states, but at the end of the day, you have to respect EU law. You can't override that. This is something that Brexiteers didn't understand. I think it was David Davis was saying, well, when we leave the European Union, we'll be in Berlin signing trade deals, not understanding it's not Berlin, it's Brussels. Berlin doesn't sign trade deals with individual countries around the world. The EU does.
For a lot of the things that we sell, it's very good to do state deals, because Our exports were more than 50% services in the last quarter that just came out. We're about 55% services now. So
how does that help small businesses in Britain? Like, this is the thing about Brexit. It was sold to small businesses as a solution to the problems they're facing. And she's talking about the service sector. She's talking about insurance. She was talking about financial services. How does that help small businesses? And once again, this is not a trade deal. Nothing has been signed here. They haven't said, this is what you're going to do. This is what we're going to do. It's just a sort of gentleman's agreement. It's about sitting down and having a chat. That's all it is.
If you want to sell financial services, insurance, pensions, that sort of thing, which is what we're good at, other business services like legal and consulting, you need to deal with the states and computer programming.
Well, I think it's really important, and I think it's good to celebrate good news, Frank.
But it's not good news. How is it good news? Look, you can have an agreement. You can sit down and speak with the representatives from these states and understand how, the laws are different in California compared to Florida, or Florida and North Carolina. How do you do business here? Like, what sort of trade do you deal? What are local taxes like? These are the sort of things you talk about. But when it comes to an actual trade deal, the real deal, no pun intended, that's between the UK government and the US government, not individual states of the US. So this is not a Brexit benefit. There's no Brexit benefit so far, apart from people who may be extremely rich and are benefiting from cuts to taxes that the Tories are pushing through at the moment, cuts to regulations, trampling upon workers' rights. Those people, the people in charge, they're the ones who are benefiting. But small businesses, I uploaded a video recently where small business owners were complaining that they can't access workers, they can't import, they can't export like they could before. And they're giving up. And here we have a Brexit benefit about something that is basically a chat. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.